I'm Jackson Pearce, and this video is about fairy tales. Just about everybody knows that the fairy tales we love and are super familiar with are kind of softer, gentler versions of the originals. For example, in the old school Cinderella, the ugly stepsisters actually cut parts of their feet off in order to fit into the glass slipper, and then pigeons peck out their eyes. In Snow White, the evil queen is forced to dance in red-hot iron slippers until her feet burn off and she dies. Little Mermaid, the prince chooses the other woman and the Little Mermaid dissolves into sea foam. The end. In Rapunzel, the prince, the guy reinvented as a thief in the most recent Disney version, he falls into a thicket of thorns and is blinded and then wanders around looking for Rapunzel. A lot of people like to accuse Disney of kind of neutering fairy tales and forever changing the way that they're remembered, and they aren't entirely wrong. Disney does rewrite fairy tales to make movies with plucky companion characters and happy endings. But I don't know if I can really criticize them for rewriting fairy tales for a few reasons. For one, there is no original version of most fairy tales. For example, while the most popular version of Red Riding Hood is the Grimm brothers version, it goes back to at least the 14th century and might even go back to Norse mythology. The first printed version wasn't even by the Grimm brothers, it was by this French dude named Charles Perrault, and in the end of that story, the wolf eats everybody and there is no happy ending. Secondly, it's sort of in the nature of fairy tales to adapt and change to a society or individual's needs. For the most part, fairy tales are educational stories. They start out as sort of myths or religious stories usually, and then they kind of evolve into morality tales, and then they kind of evolve into bedtime stories. It all depends on what the society at that time needed the story to be. Disney is doing the same thing. They're taking a fairy tale and adding some song and dance numbers to fulfill society's current need to be entertained. Even in the past 50 or 60 years, you can see a change in how fairy tales are being adapted based on society's needs. For example, Disney's Snow White was waiting on a prince to save her in the 1930s because at the time, being a beautiful, demure, and quiet wife was a very valued trait. Mulan is going out and fighting with the men because times have changed in the 1990s and we want our girls to know they can be strong, independent women. In 2009, the main character in The Princess and the Frog was animated as a black woman because we wanted our children to be colorblind. And in the next 30 years, I wager we'll see another shift in how fairy tales are adapted based on society's future needs. I guess what I'm saying is fairy tales are kind of a constantly morphing and shifting art form, and that's kind of what makes them fantastic. For the record, my favorite fairy tale, which has never been Disney-fied and therefore is largely unknown, is The Snow Queen by Hans Christian Andersen. Don't go read the Wikipedia page because the Wikipedia page on it sucks, and the real version is really good. Alright, I will see you guys later.